Now, dear listener, you know I've talked to you a lot on the Politicrat Daily podcast about making your own podcast. And let me tell you something, Anchor gives you the best opportunity to do that. It's free of charge. Yes, it's free. And there are lots of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your own phone or computer. How about that? And you can even add songs to your podcast from Spotify. It's really wonderful. You can do this, and it really is very easy. And Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. It can be heard on all kinds of platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make some money too. And money making is a good thing. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Politicrat. I am Omar Moore. It is Monday, June the 7th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, if you are someone who believes that democracy exists in the United States, do you think that we are losing that democracy? A look at why we certainly are. And I am one who thinks that we've never had democracy here in the United States at all, except for one very, very small group of people. That and some news and notes coming up next. Welcome back. So how is this Monday treating you? I hope you're well. Is it a manic Monday? I mean, is it a good Monday, a bad Monday, a so-so Monday, a wait-and-see Monday, a rough Monday, a tough Monday, a lovely Monday, a perfect Monday, a heavenly Monday? I mean, is it manic Monday? Do you wish it was Sunday? Because that's your fun day. I am singing a song, or I am saying lyrics from a song written by Prince, the one and only Prince, who, by the way, has a birthday today. So happy birthday, Prince. And it's just really sad that he's no longer with us physically. I mean, with us in spirit through his music and through his innovation and genius. I mean, he was a genius, wasn't he? We all know that about Prince. But a lot of people don't know, or some people do not realize that Prince wrote the song Manic Monday, which popularized the Bangles, a group that I actually like a great deal. I think that they've put out some good songs over the years. And Manic Monday was Prince's song. And I didn't know, by the way, that he actually did sing it. I have said actually on this podcast, I think it was as recently as 2 weeks ago, that Prince did not sing Manic Monday, but he'd written it. And I had talked about Nothing Compares to You, which he also wrote. And, that was a song that Sinead O'Connor had a big hit with. And I had said that Prince actually did perform Nothing Compares to You, and he was the originator of it. He sang it, performed it, and he wrote it. But I also said, I remember at that time, and this is about a week or two ago now, maybe even longer ago than that Prince did not sing Manic Monday, even though he wrote it. And it turns out that that's not true. I erred, and I apologize to you, dear listener. I found out, and actually I should have done deeper research into this, and I did this off the top of my head, because I had never heard him sing Manic Monday. Never, never, never. And I had been to 5 different concerts of Prince. I'm a Prince aficionado to a degree, a pretty big degree. I'm a huge fan of his. God knows, all of the things he's released, I've got pretty much not all of them, but about 75% of them. And don't forget, he has thousands and thousands of songs. And he recently, or his estate recently released some of the things that had been previously unreleased, and there are other songs. But my point being is that I had said, that he did not sing Manic Monday. That's not true. That is not true, dear listener. So I apologize. He did actually sing Manic Monday. I came across it on on Apple. He did actually sing Manic Monday. So Prince, I apologize to you too, Posthumous apology, because he did sing it. If you go to Apple, and by the way, Apple is not a place that Prince approved, to the best of my knowledge, approved his recordings to be released on. And yet, I guess, I don't know if his estate has done this now in hindsight, or whether this is being done against against Prince's wishes. That's what happens when you try to say Prince and wish at the same time, or Prince and wishes at the same time. So let me repeat that. I don't know if this has been done at the behest of the estate of Prince, or if it is being done against Prince's wishes. But what I do know is that you will see a whole lot of Prince's records, his music, on Apple. And I had heard that he had expressly forbid people to purchase his music off of Apple, because the word is, or the saying goes, or the word around the campfire, I don't know, is that he supposedly said that Apple is an exploitation ring, and these aren't his words, these are my words, but words along the lines of, this is Apple exploiting artists, and I am not here to be exploited. And we all know, by the way, that Prince had been very clear about that in the days of his contract with Warner Brothers Records, and Warner Brothers absolutely robbed him, tried to steal him down the river, stole his music, and told him, you've got to continue this contract. And that's where you saw him disown his own name for a good few years. He changed his name to The Artist. And I believe he legally changed his name to that, if I'm not mistaken. But all I can say is this. Definitely his performing name was The Artist, or the artist formerly known as Prince. Tafcap. I mean, that was his name. Then he changed it to hieroglyph, that symbol, the hieroglyph symbol. And that was actually the title of one of his albums. And I think that was one of his albums he did at Warner Brothers, or maybe not. It was done with NPG, New Power Generation, Paisley Park, I think. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I've got the albums here. I just don't remember exactly which label was which, which record label applied to which album off the top of my head. But I can tell you that, and anybody who is a Prince fan like myself, and perhaps yourself listening, knows well that he had a period of time, and I'm not going to remember exactly what the dates were, but it was sometime in the 90s and into the 2000s, if memory serves correctly, where he wrote the word slave on the side of his face, because you would see him walk around and on the side of his face would be the word slave. And that was, again, a complete protest against Warner Brothers and what they were doing and what he was saying they were doing to him. And the album Emancipation was a direct response to getting out of that contract with Warner Brothers and freeing himself of that contractual obligation and getting out of that and finishing off his relationship with Warner Brothers. And Warner Brothers treated him with a lot of disdain. And so the Emancipation album that he did, with still the symbol in place, was a 3 CD set. So I'm just giving you some of the overview of some of the record situation with Prince and how these studios, record companies, exploit artists, particularly black artists. I mean, my goodness me. James Brown, I could go on for a good deal longer about this. I'm not going to do that here, but I do want to say, all of this is to say, happy birthday, Prince. And I hope that people play some Prince records today and every day. Every day is a day to celebrate Prince. And Prince was always about trying to eradicate all of these lines of gender and race and this and that and the other. And I think Prince would have absolutely been, and I don't remember if he did this because he kept a fairly low profile, but I don't know if he ever did go to any pride parades, but I think that Prince absolutely, I think that, I would hope that, by the way, that various persons in the communities of non-conforming, non-binary, and transgendered, or lesbian, or gay, or bisexual would embrace Prince, because I think, Prince, again, this could be a very narrow-minded statement from yours truly. I'm simply saying that Prince was open to, his whole persona, his whole being was open in that way, even though he was a very reclusive person. He was someone who absolutely embraced gender nonconformity, for example. I think that's a very fair statement. And his androgyny, I think, lended to that to a degree. I think if you listen to some of his music, particularly on the Sign of the Times album that I can think of at the top of my head, and then there's some other ones, the Love Sexy album that he did as well, you can see, you can hear, and you can also see if you watch the videos now, many more of them have been released to YouTube, which Prince in the past, again, was, when he was here on the planet here, was expressly against releasing all these things on YouTube. And now I think that perhaps his estate has carried that out after he's passed. And I think maybe that was in accordance with Prince after he passed. But the point is that you will see a lot more of the Prince videos now. And you can look at the performances. And Prince is totally someone who believed in being who you are and celebrating that. And his music, if you listen to those two albums I mentioned, Love Sexy and Sign of the Times, you can hear his voice. Sometimes he would impersonate and try to be in his music. He would play the character of a female in some of his songs. We go back now to hundreds of years where there were women who were fighting in the African continent, were part of wars, fighting in the militaries in the African continent, in dynastic empires. You go back to the days in the 1700s or 1800s at the Globe Theatre in London, where you'd have men playing women's roles. But in that way, it was very different because women weren't even allowed to play themselves. You had that's how it was. It was all men. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong about that. At the Globe Theatre. But I just wanted to say that for these first few minutes here, because Prince was definitely somebody who embodied a spirit of oneness, and oneness meaning not oneness under whiteness, because that's what some people mean when they say, oh, we're all one, we're all Americans. It's this, we're all white, no. Prince is talking about this universality of being is what Prince was talking about. And their song specifically on the Sign of the Times album, If I Were Your Girlfriend, particularly If I Was Your Girlfriend, you have to listen to the song. And I think it's that song where he literally takes on the character of a female in the song. Of a woman in the song, I should say. And I think it's that song. And there are other songs on that album, and on the Love Sexy album as well, and on a number of other albums where Prince is channeling, or he's really taking on a different realm of himself. He's exploring all of these facets of himself. And people are uncomfortable with those kinds of things. People are very uncomfortable with that because our society tells us, oh, we're this or we're that. And doesn't allow human beings to fully explore themselves, or at least that's what the outward framework of the country is. But in reality, behind closed doors, people explore all kinds of things about who they are. Some people don't, and some people do. And there are people who do this, and, they find a sense of self, and they find a beauty and a harmonization in reconciling, or at least in exploring, these different facets of themselves. And then other people are like, ooh, well, I'm not going to go there. Ooh. And I don't mean to mock that. I mean, people, come on. If you've been raised in a culture or in a family that was very rigid and strict, maybe that has been the imprimatur that has been placed on you, or you've rebelled against that. And you have done all of these things that perhaps you're glad to do, and say, hey, look, I'm glad I at least tried this, or I at least, but I don't want to sound trite, because it's not about trying things on a menu, because some people probably see it that way. It's about really exploration and finding yourself. And so, Prince, in salute to you, sir, happy birthday. And again, to everybody out there who believes in exploring who they are, learning who they are, and finding out who they are, and being who they are, most importantly of all. I hope you're having a good Monday.
Community members now taking action after some racist stickers were found in a busy downtown district in San Mateo. We are blurring the words so you don't see them, but the language simply too vulgar to share with you. We've learned that those stickers were placed in areas with graffiti, and we're also learning that it's not the first time that stickers like these have been popped up in San Mateo. We first learned that they also were appearing last summer on a park bench in Central Park. One resident says that she wants to raise awareness after reporting the stickers to police.
There's not really much they can do because it's hard, legally to find someone and get it done. And they just pointed me to an app they have so that you can report instances of vandalism or anything. It is basically the only way that can be done, especially since they can't really do anything else. So it would be nice if other people could also look out for it and just take it down, because I think just the worst thing was that it was in the park and it's a public space and there are kids and families there and people can read it.
Yes, it would be nice if other people could also look out for these racist stickers in San Mateo, California. Yeah, it would be. And that was the voice of Alberta Zagorov. She is a resident, and she's a white woman in San Mateo, California, which is roughly half an hour south of, 25 minutes or so south of San Francisco if you're driving. And about, it's roughly, 25, 30 miles away. It's about 20 miles south of, 25 miles or so south of San Francisco. And what's happened in that news report from KRON, which I've referred to before, KRON is Channel 4 in San Francisco. Their news program, as you just heard that report there, chronicled racist stickers. Someone's been running around, or some persons have been running around in parts of San Mateo, slapping around, or in San Mateo period, slapping around, snapping stickers on, racist stickers on park benches, on walls, in public places. And it's, what the hell is wrong with people? As I've asked many, many times. You've got racists all over this place. And so here's a resident, Alberta Zagorov, who said, come on, this is, no, we reject this. I'm taking these stickers off here. There's a public place here. And even if it wasn't a public place, if you see these things, take them off, get rid of them. It's just disgusting. And as you heard there, we're not going to show you the racist things. Okay, fine, we understand that. But again, this is California, folks. And I want people who don't live in California, or some people who think that, California, it's so left-leaning. Again, left, center, or right has nothing to do with whether someone's racist or homophobic or anti-gay or misogynistic, left or right or center. You see, that's the problem. People have, because this society ties everybody here in the US and anywhere else in the world to, well, if you're left, you're not racist. If you're right, you're likely to be racist. And it's like, no, there's some people on the right who aren't racist, right? Or who actually aren't saying racist things and aren't behaving in racist ways. And maybe, I should say, who may be, I don't know if they may be anti-racist or not, because that's really where you need to be. I'm simply saying that there are people in the Democratic Party or progressives or anyone else, and they're racist as hell. So this left-right nonsense is the wrong way to go into tying that to people being racist. Now, granted, there's no question that the Republican cult is a racist, misogynistic place. And it tries to masquerade, oh, we're not. We've got black and brown folk in our party, and we've got women in our party of all groups, racial groups. Like any of those things is going to hide the fact that Republicans are blocking black and brown people from voting, blocking Asians from voting, blocking poor whites from voting, blocking elderly from voting. I'm having trouble saying that word today, but come on. So listen, this is this left and right stuff. And then again, don't forget, back in the day, whenever that day was, well, you know what the day was, when it was the 1800s, the Democrats were the party of enslavement in the United States. So this nonsense about left and right and center, and that means that it's just that is another way to just keep this system where it is, on your neck. Okay? I mean, it's that simple. But all of this is not to get away from Alberta Zagorov, who I think did a good thing as a person who cares. And that is the kind of thing an anti-racist would do. Now, I don't know Alberta Zagorov at all. I just happened to see her on the news, on K-Ron News yesterday here in San Francisco. And I thought, I'm going to have that audio played on this episode because I think that is a good thing. That's a person who, as a white person particularly, who is saying, no, I reject this, this is wrong. And this is in line with what I said on Saturday's episode a couple of days ago, when I said, dear listener, that it's up to all of us. We have to do our bit. If we want the world to be a better place, if we want to make the world better, we want to make our country better, we want to make our city better, we have to start with ourselves and try to make ourselves better. And one of the things that Alberta Zagorov did is do that by seeing the racism, seeing the hatred, seeing these racist stickers, and removing them, and then reporting it. Taking video of it, taking photos of it, and then reporting it. And that's what each and every one of us has to do. Same thing when it comes to Stop Asian Hate. Literally, these are the things we will have to do. I don't think it's enough for us to sit here and go, well, I'm not this and I'm not that and I reject this. You have to actively do things like this. Report these things. If you see some racist graffiti or something, or some swastikas around, because I've seen those in San Francisco. Take a photo of it, report it to the police, tweet it to the police, tweet it to a media organization in your local area. Put it on social media, but don't forget to @ your local news. This is how you start to gain attention to things. This is how you report things. Report these things to the organizations that deal with eradicating hate. Whether it is the Simon Wiesenthal Center, whether it is the Anti-Defamation League, whether it is the NAACP, whether it is Black Lives Matter, whether it is, think of all those organizations. StopAAPIHate.org. Think of all of these places. I've talked about a number of these organizations over the last few months and in the last year plus. And this is what we need to do. These are the small but important things that we must do. And we must also report these to our local elected officials as well. People have to remember that all politics is local. And I'm going to get to politics. And I'm going to get to politics, and I'm going to talk about, as I do an abrupt shift, but I do want to say that's a nice gesture from somebody who cares. Alberta Zagorov in San Mateo. And I appreciate it. I don't know if she's listening to this, but I do appreciate it. I'm just saying that that's what we all have to do. We have to do that. It's not enough to just kind of just look at it and be horrified and then move on, or post it on Twitter, but don't report it to. And you don't have to put your name on it. Tweet it to. You don't have to put your name and address, obviously. You can send it to your local police department in your city. If you've seen stuff like this, make sure that you do put that and tag your local police department with it. Make sure you do send a copy of it to your elected official in your area, your local politicians. And tag it to the media too. We need to root all of this out. And the only way we can begin to do that is to take an active role in trying to do that, an active role in doing that. I played you the audio of that video the other day from the Lost Soul Courier Collective. You heard it. All 7+ minutes of that white racist male here in San Francisco, just a few, this is about a 10-minute walk, 15-minute walk from here, from where I am, and just screaming and telling this guy, I want to see your ID, and this is in 2021, right down the street, not far from here. I'm telling you, so, this is what we need to do, and the brother who was being followed and blocked by this guy, this white guy, oh, you have my packages. My packages have been stolen. What the fuck? Asking him for his ID, won't let him leave, false imprisonment, won't let him leave the driveway, won't let him, he's delivering products. I'm telling you. So this permeates California. Racism and all kinds of bigotry. Racism permeates this state. And don't get it twisted. Because if you are thinking that, California, so much better to be here than in the South, that's not always true now. And yes, there are some things about the South and the Deep South that, it will give people pause, some people pause. I can tell you that they will be quicker to say hello to you than people will here, at least in this part of San Francisco. But I just want to say to Alberta Zagorov and anybody who does these kinds of good deeds, thank you. This is what we need to do more of, all of us. And I include myself in that always, because I am no different from anybody else. We all have an obligation to do these things, and we must start now. Welcome back. So, the question on the table on this edition of the Politicrat Daily Podcast is, do you think, wherever you may be on this planet, do you think that the notion of democracy, or that democracy itself, if you're one of those who believes that there is democracy in the United States of America, do you think that it has gone, or it is being destroyed, or it is only a matter of time now before democracy does not exist at all in the United States? I've talked ad nauseum about how I view this and how I just don't think there's ever been democracy here in the United States, except for rich white male property owners. But those are the only people that democracy has ever, so-called democracy has ever existed for. And even that, where's the democracy in denying everyone else the right to vote, or killing people, or enslaving people, or massacring people so that you can live? Like, there's this zero-sum game. If you win, I lose. If they, whoever they are, succeed, I fail. if you win, then that's all that matters and no one else can win at all. I mean, and that's what this is, and that's what this system is, that is so relentlessly oppressive, that systemically discriminates against black people, against brown people. And so that's my position in the Cliff Notes version. But if you're someone who believes that democracy is alive and well in the United States, and we hear politicians saying this all the time, oh, our democracy survived, it was attacked and it survived, and January 6, 2021 was, they tried to attack our democracy, but they did not succeed. I played audio of that being spoken from various politicians, Mitch McConnell, various politicians, Chuck Schumer, various politicians, Joe Biden, now President Biden, various politicians, Vice President Kamala Harris. I didn't play that. I don't think I played the audio of her saying it, but I know that she said things like this, as have the aforementioned others. But do you think that democracy is being destroyed, or do you think that this is what happens when you don't have democracy? This is what we're seeing now continues to happen if you don't have democracy at all. I don't want to frame this as if it's a chicken or egg type of situation, which came first. I'm not trying to frame it that way. I'm trying to expand the ways that I want to have the discussion, or to have this monologue, to get one's self thinking, if I can speak, to get oneself speaking and thinking about if that is the state of existence, the state of play, if you will, of the United States of America at this moment, here in 2021. When you think about this spatially, just for some context, geographically, you've got the G8 summit going on, or is it the G7? I think it's the G8 summit going on right now, or about to go on this week, or certainly this week or next, if not already, in London, face to face. I mean, President Biden's going to be in London at some point in this week or next. And you're going to have the other world leaders, 7 or 8 world leaders also. Vladimir Putin is expected to be there, dictator, expected to be there as part of this G7 or G8. And they're going to be the other nations, Japan, and et cetera, who are member states. Germany, France, and I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head, but I cannot at this point. But the bottom line is you get the idea. And the UK obviously is one of them too. They're hosting, Boris Johnson's hosting. So that's happening, right? On the one hand. On the other hand, you've got all of these things going on in other parts of the planet. You've got serious problems with children in Brazil being infected with COVID-19 and dying. The crisis there and the pandemic is absolutely off the charts, horrendous. You've got India, the situation there is absolutely abominable. Oxygen issues, not enough oxygen. You still have dozens of thousands of people dying daily, or at least infected daily by COVID, and 4, 5, 6,000 people a day dying from it in India. You've got a crisis there. People are not vaccinated there at all, or very, very few are. And on the African continent, forget it. There are very few places that have had any vaccination rate at all, while we here in the United States and in the United Kingdom talk about, we have a 50% vaccination rate. We have 50% of our citizenry is fully vaccinated, or 35%, as it is here in the U.S., are fully vaccinated. Or as President Biden put it last week, we have at least 100 million people partially vaccinated, and we want to get to 70% of people in the United States, of adults in the United States, partially vaccinated by July 4th. And we're roughly around, 50 or 60%, whatever the number is. But you've got these continents, like the African continent. Listen to me. You've got continents, like the African continent, where you have nowhere near that percentage of people vaccinated, partially or fully. I mean, there's very few places on the African continent at all where people are even receiving vaccine. I did play you the 4 or 5 minutes from Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor in Joe Biden's administration, who made it clear that the U.S. is already taking action and is sending its surplus of vaccine to the African continent, to India, to South America, Guatemala, Brazil, this place, that place, the other, everywhere, Central America, Guatemala, wherever. I mean, there's so many places that where this all needs to be done. And so Jake Sullivan did this. He talked about this last week. I played you the audio of this. And so that's going on. Then you've got reproductive rights under assault. You've got the U.S. Supreme Court today saying, immigrants cannot apply to be permanent residents of the U.S. I mean, that's a serious situation. It's a conservative Supreme Court, which is 6 conservatives and 3 people who are more on the left end, if you will. And here's the proper headline, at least from the AP. So this is a tweet, it's not a headline, but it's their tweet from AP, at AP. And the tweet is, the Supreme Court rules that thousands of people living in the U.S. for humanitarian reasons are ineligible to apply to become permanent residents. The ruling affects 400,000 people from 12 countries who arrived in the U.S. illegally. Now, that's the tweet. Now, I have not read the Supreme Court decision, and I need to do that before I really weigh in on it. But I can tell you, and I modify what I said earlier, this is about thousands of people living for humanitarian reasons in the country, ineligible to apply to become permanent residents. Now, this is really, I don't think this is a good decision. That is as far as I'm going to weigh in on it. But I need to read it first to get into the detail and the methodology and the rationale and the dissent and the majority opinion, 6-3. And I suspect, without knowing more, I have not delved in. I mean, this literally has come up as I've been doing this episode, that I could guess that 6 people who said yes to this are all the right wingers, the conservatives, and then the people on the side that said no, the 3 judges, if I can guess, I bet you it was 6-3 decision, said no, and they're probably the Democratic members, if you will, of the United States Supreme Court. Now, look, I should go look at this because I shouldn't say that. I think I need to really, really look at this because Eleanor Kagan, Justice Kagan, right? I really need to be easy about this. Let me not jump to conclusions here, because Justice Kagan, who is on that left side of the bench, wrote the majority opinion. So this, to me, could well be a vastly more different outcome. It might be a unanimous opinion. It might be not. So, and yeah, it's a unanimous opinion, it looks like. Oops, Omar. This isn't en banc. This is an opinion of the court with no dissents. So I think that should tell you it's an 11-page opinion. Sanchez versus Mayorkas. Mayorkas, Mayorks. Mayorkas is Alejandro Mayorkas, who is the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. This case was argued less than 2 months ago, April the 19th of this year, 2021. Decided today, June 7th. So yeah, let me slow my roll here on that. But look, the reason I mention all of these events that seemingly seem to be disparate and not at all related is because it does work, in my view, into this notion of all these things are going on in various parts of the world, and where does the United States stand or sit or move or ambulate in all of this? Because this country, the United States of America, has often been thought of in global mythology and in American mythology as the country where we are the guardians and the beacons of democracy, and we look out for people all over the world, and we do this and we do that, and we are at the vanguard of human rights, and we stand tall in making sure that other countries can't do these things, and we will not tolerate that here in the United States of America. I can hear the laughter in the back of the room. You're not supposed to laugh when the host is talking. But the reason why I hear the laughter in the back of the room is because it's bullcrap what that notion is about the United States being the vanguard when we've committed so many human rights violations all over the planet. And our foreign policy, well, it absolutely makes a mockery of us. It puts paid to this idea that we are this beacon of light. I think we've been a beacon of blood. Buckets of it. I mean, if we look at history, my assessment would be strongly backed up by the history. Removing people from power that the government doesn't like. We don't like this person. No, let's remove him. And let's put our guy there. Or our lady there. They're running the government like a business in a very sociopathic and psychopathic way. We don't like this CEO. We're going to get rid of them and put this guy in. And that's kind of like the movie The Hudsucker Proxy. Do you remember that movie? Paul Newman and Tim Robbins. I think the CEO, if I remember this correctly, I don't remember it off the top of my head. So this could be wrong for those of you who are film aficionados. That there's I think the boss, the CEO dies or he is voted out or something, and they find this CEO who's had no experience doing anything, and they stick him in the position, and that's the Tim Robbins character, if I remember it correctly. And, you know, anyway, I don't want to give anything away, but you have to watch that movie, The Hudsucker Proxy. And that's what we've done here in some ways, and it's not as comedic as that movie in some, because it's tragic and deadly, isn't it? I mean, the millions of people who have died at our, you know, the barrels of our guns, or the barrels of weaponry that we've made, that we've shipped off to some really unholy regime someplace on the planet, and then they go and in turn use those. You know, people, you know, in Israel, the Israeli government bombing the living daylights out of the Palestinians in Gaza, and in these places. I mean, come on. And the world knows this is true. And the world has largely been silent, apart from a few little sharply worded press releases and a couple of statements here and there. But at the end of the day, the Israeli government continues to bomb the living daylights out of Palestinians. Now, look, it's not happening necessarily right this very second, although how do I know? The ceasefire is still holding. And President Biden, I don't think, is strong enough on dealing with this matter. Why? Because Israel, the Israeli government, is getting something between 10 and $15 billion worth of funding a year, if not more than that. And I'm not saying that countries can't get funded, but look at what you're funding. Look at the apparatus you're funding. You're funding a government that is murdering Palestinians, that is murdering other human beings. And yet, at the same time, we'll talk about some other regime, which we don't like, that is doing the very same things in a lot of these situations. But we won't do anything to stop that, or we will do something to stop it, I should say. We will do something to stop those, whichever those regimes are, that we don't like. We will bomb them. But we won't touch governments that are doing the very same things, but we like them. So we're not going to do it. I mean, that's the same thing I talk about with people who, you know, will go on social media and support the Democratic person and rail against the Republican person, And they're both doing the same injurious, harmful thing. But when it comes to the Democratic person, they just turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. It's like the racist so-called joke that gets told at your workplace. And you hear it and you know it's wrong. You turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. Or you may laugh and chuckle, either because you agree with it or because you're uncomfortable with it. But you won't speak up and say, damn it, that's racist, that's wrong. Don't say that in here. And our workplace is not supposed to be a place for this. And it's got to stop. Rather than say those things, you'll turn a deaf ear and you'll pretend you didn't hear it because you don't want to make waves. That is the same methodology of turning the other silo when the government you like bombs Palestinians, but when some regime somewhere that you don't like does the same thing or actually feeds people or actually gives them better health care than we've got here in the US, all of a sudden, we've got to stop them. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. And it's usually because of some resource-based thing. Oil in Venezuela, oil in Iraq, oil here, oil there, oil freaking everywhere. And so you want the resources so you can make money. And so you invent a war in Iraq. And you lie to us all. And many of us knew that you were lying to us at the time. Some of us who have now come into the light and have recognized that you got lied to didn't understand it at the time and were so vigorously for this so-called war, where a war in which the Iraqis didn't do anything to us. We went in there, George W. Bush and the United States government that he headed up invaded Iraq and bombed the living daylights out of it. And Iraq did not do anything to us. We went in there, or George W. went in there. The coalition of the willing, like, rinky-dink ass, I shouldn't say that, but countries that, come on now, you hadn't heard the name of, you couldn't point to on a map. Aside from the UK, the coalition of the willing. And by the way, the UK was dragged into that. Tony Blair, the poodle, as he was nicknamed. And George Michael, God rest his soul, affectionately, I shouldn't say affectionately, but nicknamed in that song, Shoot the Dog, that he did. And he was referring to Tony Blair. That was totally about Tony Blair and kissing up to George W. during the Iraq War. Oh my God, go listen to Shoot the Dog. And all the innuendo in that song and all the pointed criticisms and the satire that George Michael, I almost said George W., the other George Michael, was talking about in that song. Great song, by the way. Shoot the Dog. No, not literally. That's the name of the song. And there's points to be made. And that's what, believe me, George Michael certainly does in that song. But I'm saying all of this, dear listener, to again illustrate that we are not on easy street here. And we think we are. Some of us think we are on easy street. And the advertising on Madison Avenue advertising, lends the impression that we are. And so I ask you, in the backdrop of all of what I've said, in the backdrop of 500 pieces of legislation being signed into law, passed into legislatures and signed into law, that is saying you can't vote, or basically telling you that you can't vote. We're making it harder for you to vote. You can't pass out pizza. You can't pass out bottled water. You can't pass out anything. But you can pass out in line waiting for 11 hours. That you can do. And that's what these laws are all about. And they are targeted at black and brown voters, Native American voters, Asian voters, elderly voters, poor white voters. Because these are the groups of people who voted for Democrats overwhelmingly in 2020 and in early 2021. These are the individuals that make up the victory, that made up the victory for Joe Biden in Arizona. Latinos. Georgia, black folk. Georgia, some Asian folk. Georgia, some Latinos. Georgia, some elderly voters, some poor white voters. Wisconsin. I can go to Pennsylvania. I can go to all these, and these are all states where all these, in Texas, where President Biden, Joe Biden at the time, did not win that state, but got a very strong vote there. I mean, I'm telling you, this is no accident. And this is how a power structure fights back. How dare you? You want to vote? Fuck you. I'm going to put legislation in all over the country. Your asses can't eat pizza. Your asses can't pass out drinks. Your asses can't pass out water. Your asses can't do shit but pass out. I mean, this is really what this is about. Bring down and drive down the turnout so that these clowns and these psychopaths can stay in power. These criminals can stay in power. And that's what is happening. You've got schools. Schools. In 12 states now, the laws are being passed saying you can't teach black history, American history, because that is American history. Black history is American history. You can't teach that in these schools. You can't teach about enslavement. You can't teach about the Native Americans being massacred. You can't teach the Trail of Tears. You can't teach anything to do with enslavement, anything to do with Ida B. Wells, anything to do with any of this, because it might make white people uncomfortable. And as I said the other day, I don't think it's really about the discomfort, even though I'm sure there are many white people who are uncomfortable about a lot of things, including their own shadow. I don't know. Maybe that's a little unfair. But you get what I'm saying. The notion of the discomfort, I don't think is the total story. I think the real story is that it's about what if little Johnny or little Jessica wakes up and says, you know what, damn it. Yeah, this is racist. Yeah, damn it. No, I don't like the idea that why are we always on top of things? Why are we always placed at the center? Damn, I'm going to challenge that. And I might jump into that protest and that demonstration down the street in the next town over that says Black Lives Matter. And I may want to be a part of that. I may want to be an anti-racist, and I may want to contribute to trying to change the world that I'm living in. And I'm not happy with a world where all I see is vanilla around me. I want to see the world as the world actually is, with populations of people who don't look like I do, who are black, who are brown, who are Latino, who are Native American, who are Asian, who are, name the group. And maybe I want to challenge this whiteness power structure and this systemic whiteness that murders people, that allows for police officers to assassinate and torture black and brown people and then move on to the next job a couple of months later, like nothing happened, and allow them not to be convicted with very few exceptions. Maybe I want to have a say about changing that. And I don't want to be a sheep and just go along with the lie that I feel so comfortable with. Maybe I want to break out of that. And that's what the real truth is, because that really means that the people who say that, well, white people might be uncomfortable, are the people who are afraid of losing their power. And they know that once little Johnny and little Jessica get a little education on what really is going down here in the United States, they might just say, no, you guys need to be out of here. And they might just organize, and they might just tell people to vote, and they might just unseat your rusty racist ass from power and dismantle this whole blooming system. They might just do those things. So what you're really doing is, when you're signing these laws and you're passing these laws in these 12 states thus far that talk about, well, we don't want to teach this because it might make white people uncomfortable. It's that you're uncomfortable. I mean, that's the real predicate of all this. The underlying thing is that you're uncomfortable with your power being taken from you, with someone challenging you, and you don't want to lose your power. So you want to keep oppressing people because that's how you gain power, by oppressing others. That's what the whole history of the country is. I mean, come on. Your existence and survival has been predicated on standing on the necks of black and brown people, of native people. And so that's the deal. And now you can't power share. You can't coexist. You've got to have the power all to yourself. And to have that power, your idea of power is stepping on the necks and crushing the necks of black and brown people, of native peoples. There is no happy medium for you. You're not going to share anything. So it's got to be one way or another. Either you are going to cede your throne or you're not. And so that's where everyone else comes in. And that's why you are frantically passing bills and laws. Oh, don't teach this, because we don't want to awaken the masses of white folk who may be dormant. The younger ones I'm talking about. This isn't about the older white generations, although there are certainly people in older white generations, I would imagine, who have some degree of acuity and some degree of consciousness. This is about the next generations of white kids. That's what this is about. I think that's a lot of what this is about. And they don't want their asses waking up. Ooh, all those white people in those protests last year all around the world too. Good God. Can you imagine? We can't let the next generation be like this. Oh no. We've got to pass some laws. Don't teach that black history. Don't teach that American history, because that is black history. And black history is American history, and we can't have it. We cannot have it. Because you know what? Little Johnny and little Jessica, they're going to turn around and maybe, just maybe, they'll have our guts for garters. Welcome back. So really, I just want to continue, because I didn't quite finish where I was going to, but I do want, really, I guess the finish is the reiteration. Do you think that democracy is gone in the United States? Do you think that it's already gone? Do you think it was never here in the first place? Do you think that right now we are actively seeing it? I mean, there are many of us here in this country and beyond these shores who have said for years to people that there is no democracy here in the USA, and people ignored us. A lot of white people ignored us. Oh, they're just some disgruntled black folk. Seriously. And we've been saying this for 500 years, that there's no democracy in America, in the United. Well, of course, we know that the USA, I know smart Alex out there who may be saying this. I know it was 1776 when the USA came about. I'm talking about something a little larger. The whole concept of America, and I've talked about this before, and how we talk about America, and we usually are pointing at the US of A, but America is really North, Central, and South. North, US, Central, South. That's the one big-ass player. These continents, the Americas, right? So, especially South America. I mean, North America consists of Canada and the US, right? And then you've got Central America. So, and then you've got South America, these continents, right? So, continents, not incontinence or continents in that way, but continents. CONTINENTS, not CONTINENCE. That's a totally different kind of continents. Sounds the same. Listen to me, I can't even. It sounds the same, but it's spelt very differently, and it means something very different. Here's what I'm trying to say to you, dear listener, today. And again, thank you very much for your loyalty and for your listenership. It really is much, much appreciated. It truly is. And what I'm trying to say is, Do you think that democracy is dead in the US? Do you think so? Do you think it's on its way? Because as I postulated a few episodes back now, why do we need empire? And any notion of an American empire now, I mean, if you want to talk about thieving and killing and murdering people and discriminating against them as empire, as that like that's some positive thing, I know what empire means. I get it. The Roman Empire, the Greek, I get all of that. But what I'm saying is that what empire really is? I mean, yeah, I don't want to get that definitional and I have to look up what empire is because I know what it is and I know you know what it is. But is that what we're talking about? Why do we ever need an empire in the first place? If that is what we have had here in the United States, why would we have ever needed it? And who needed it? And for what reasons? To dominate? An empire of their own. That's a book, by the way, by Neil Gabler about Hollywood. And he has been really attacked for that book. And there's some reasons why that I think do have some great validity to them, for sure. And then there's things about that book that really, wow, you have to read that book. And I can completely know, though, that there are some very good reasons for why some people would not have Neil Gabler over as a house guest anytime soon. But again, this is not my whole focus here is how are we thinking about this? Because again, even posing this question may sound a little bit loaded to some. And I don't know if some of you feel that way. Do you, dear listener, feel that it's a loaded question? Do we have a democracy here in the United States? Have we had one? Do you think it's withering on the vine? I mean, are those loaded questions to you? Perhaps they are. I mean, for me, I know where I stand, and you know where you stand, perhaps. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know where you stand on this, but the question needs to be asked, however obvious the answer may be or may not be. And everyone will have a different answer to that question. But we have a mythology in this country that continues. And it continues on in statements that I've talked about before when people say, politicians who know better say things like, this is not who we are. When it's so clear it's who we are. And this is why, you got these laws literally in these 12 states about don't teach this and that. Critical race theory, ooh, I'm scared. That literally say, this is not who we are. I mean, they are echoing this kind of ridiculously phony call, it's dishonest call from politicians who know better. In both of these political parties we have, the major ones here in the US, who say this. And in fact, the Democrats seem to say that more often. This is not who we are. Of course it's who we are. And these 12 states passing these laws about you can't teach them, they are literally saying this is not who we are. Literally. When they say you can't teach Black history, you can't teach American history, you can't teach enslavement, you can't do because it might make white people uncomfortable. This is not who we are. This is not who we are. I mean, think about that. But I want to get to a different dimension of these questions that I'm throwing at you here, however rude and impolitely that they may be thrown orally, AURALLY, to your ear, for you to hear. If you are someone that's fortunate to be able to have the gift of the ear to hear, because there are people who don't. But I'm saying that not flippantly, but I'm saying that in acknowledgement of inclusion, of recognizing that there are people who are not able to hear what I'm saying. Not that what I'm saying is this great, profound shakes, but it's that is the way of this world. We have people in the world who are able to hear and some who aren't so fortunate to. And I really do think it's, at the risk of sounding patronizing, I think it's important to remember that those of us who can hear are very fortunate, and we must count that blessing and that privilege and make sure that we use our privilege affirmatively as well. I mean, I really should. I've toyed with the idea, by the way, of developing transcripts for some of these episodes, not all of them, but those would be really lengthy transcripts for those who aren't able to hear. I mean, that's something that I've been looking at, and we'll see. I shouldn't just blurt that out as an aside. It's as a continuum. As we go through these questions, though, that I have tossed at you on this Monday, is to really think about the current landscape. I mentioned the U.S. Supreme Court a few minutes ago. I'm going to mention it again here now, and I didn't mention it yet. I mentioned it maybe yesterday, certainly mentioned it yesterday's episode, Sundays. But I'm going to mention it here on Monday's episode. Joe Manchin. I mean, he represents, in my view, a significant full court press to undermine any semblance of democracy that's left in the country. But I think, again, I want to conflict myself and contradict myself by saying we don't have a democracy. That's why all this shit's happening with Joe Manchin. That kind of is emblematic of the fact that we don't have a democracy here in the United States, not to re-inject the same theme of my own opinion that I've put forth a billion times here. So that's where I stand. Again, Groundhog Day. That's where I stand. And again, I don't want to just look at Joe Manchin, because Joe Manchin is a symptom of this. And I said this yesterday about, be bold. Don't be selfish about, I've got to look at my own ass here. I get it. That's what politicians do. They look at their own rear ends. And I'm saying that your whole constituency is more important than just your voters, because your whole constituency does not vote. Most of your constituency does not vote anywhere in the United States. It's a small percentage of people, relatively speaking, versus the entire populations from the states and of the states from which they vote, in the state they reside. So that was what I was saying yesterday about that with Joe Manchin. And you've got to look out for your whole constituents. And I mean, yes, okay, the ones who vote are the ones who are going to put you in or take you out of office. I get that. But be bold. If you want to govern and be a senator and be about it and be a governor or a president or a local city council person and be about it, then really care about your constituents. I can't pass this election. And that's the thing. Joe Manchin, I'm a Democrat, but I don't want to sign on to eradicating these odious election bills. And I don't want to remake U.S. election law. I don't want it to be better, because I've got to look at my constituents. I've got to look at my voters, because my rusty ass might be voted out. And I get it that every politician looks at this. Of course they do. But there was a time, as I said, with Adam Clayton Powell III. Yes, he didn't care about all that. I mean, he cared about the people, of course. But that's who he worked for, the people. He wasn't working for the votes. He was working for their interests. Passing all this incredible legislation that helped a great many black and brown people, by the way, and white people as well. But it was a great many black and brown people who benefited. Adam Clayton Powell III, again, you've got to read up on him. Maybe I'll do an episode on him at some point, but you've got to read, you've got to learn. And this is the kind of history that in 12 states you're not going to get to learn unless you go forage for books. And not only on Amazon. Go to some black bookstores, please. We still do exist, And we have bookstores, and we read. It's like, what? You would be amazed to see how many people think that black folk do not read a book. And there are these racist so-called jokes that go around about things like that. And my whole thing here is Joe Manchin is a symptom. And January 6th, 2021 is a symptom of a system that has been doing this forever. This country, the US of A, was birthed in violence. So why do people expect this country not to be a violent nation? Why do people expect it not to be? If it's in the DNA of the country that was stolen from the Native Americans and Native Americans genocided, and You've got presidents who participated in the Trail of Tears, Andrew Jackson. I mean, come on. Really? Enslavement in the country, Jim Crow in the country, murders and lynchings of black folk all over the country. So how could you expect it not to be a result? Why would you expect January 6th not to have happened? The terrorist attack on January 6th, 2021. Why would you have expected that not to have happened? If you take the continuum of the way this country was birthed and ripped from the ownership of Native Americans. This is their land we're sitting on. Come on. Examine the names of the cities and towns that you live in and all over the country in the United States. And you look at the town, they're Native American names. Nearly a great many, millions of them are. And then, of course, some of them are named after John Smith and not John Brown, which they should be named after instead. But it's John Smith, or it's General this and General that. And what about Native American? Come on. What do you think Weehawken in New Jersey? Where do you think that comes from? And who do you think that comes from? What group of people? Weehawken, Manhattan, Milwaukee. Where do you think? Who? Come on, people. Come on now. So again, that my whole thing is, whether it is a Joe Manchin, whether it is the guy that was in the White House before President Biden, the immediate previous person who stunk up the joint of his criminality and his illegality and his disgustingness. Or whether it's someone like Andrew Jackson or Andrew Johnson, the black codes. I mean, come on. We can go back to the beginning. George Washington. Owning black people as property, enslaved black people, and owned them as property while he was running around and taking his oath of office. And Thomas Jefferson, who basically, I shouldn't even put the word basically in front of it. Oh, did he really have a love affair with Sally Hemings? Or was it that he raped Sally Hemings? Come on now. Don't jump. Come on now. Let's get real. Ooh. Strom Thurmond, 100 years old. He was in the Senate at 100, like 99 or 100, and passed away, I think, at 100 or 101. And this guy was a Klan member. This guy was all about segregation. Segregation. He was all George Wallace. All that motherfucker. And come to find out, as we did years down the line, that he was fathering and had fathered a black child. A child who was black. And had either had an affair with or raped. I don't remember which. Had this affair or raped. I mean, let's be blunt here. And again, I apologize for triggering people. Because it seems in some ways, and I must say this, that when I do speak about this, sometimes I am cueing into how I'm speaking about these things. If they're not put in the proper, and this isn't the, but if I just blurt out a word like that, like rape, it is very triggering. And so I do want to say, I'm going to try to put some more disclaimers on things before I say them, because again, I am sensitive to these kinds of things. These are very serious things. And I do think that was what, if it was one of those things or the other where Strom Thurmond is concerned, he had a black child, and he never said anything about this publicly. Ooh, I can't say that because I've got to have votes. I've got to keep the folk in, was it South Carolina? Was he? Yeah, I think so, South Carolina. I got to keep my voters on side, and I can't have know that I fathered a black girl, I can't do South Carolina accent, as you can probably hear. These are the things. So he fought, and he was paying. And I think the daughter or the granddaughter, the daughter is still alive, and she recalled payments, and I think she was getting payments now, or rather, when he was alive, and back then. So, hey, I mean, let's get real. And the history books, we can't teach that. But this is what was going on. Strom Thurmond talking about keep these black folk away. But he wasn't keeping himself away from a black woman. He was not keeping himself away. He was not keeping away. So you've got all of these people throughout the United States, and they were actively trampling black folk. No democracy for you, or you, or you, or you. And at the same time, and we all know this is not history that you don't know. This is really elementary, my dear Watson type of history, but it's there, and that doesn't minimize the history. Talking about, well, the nation is the greatest nation, and all men are created equal, and it was all white men, and even that was a lie, because it was all rich white men. That's really what they were saying. And women, forget it. Black folk overall, forget it. Women of any group, forget it. And gay and lesbian and transgender, that wasn't even in the blink of an eye of a thought of these so-called founding racists. Come on now. Let's just tell it as it was and like it is. So do you think that there's democracy here in the United States? Do you think it's eroded? Do you think it's done? And who's eroding it? And that's another important thing, is who is eroding it? And what do we need to do? As importantly, if not more, since I am about trying to find some solutions, or at least present something. What are we going to do if the answer is democracy is dying before our eyes? What are we going to do to revive it? And what does that look like? And who's going to be doing the reviving? And in order to, if there is a semblance of democracy left in the country, how do we strategize to make it more than a semblance and make it something that is actually democracy, and not democracy in the eyes of a few rich white people or some white people in general so democracy, and yet have no idea that there really ain't any of it here. I'm so tempted to play Leonard Cohen. And that song he sings, Democracy, and the line in it that goes, and it's part of the chorus, democracy is coming to the USA. There's a reason why he didn't say democracy is here in the USA in that song, God rest his soul. He's no longer with us, Leonard Cohen. He's been gone for a few years now. One of the people I really wanted to see in concert. I know that's such a selfish aside, but it's true. He's one of the few people I really wanted to see. I didn't even got to see him, but his music is still with us. He is still with us in that way. But he sings that line, democracy is coming to the USA, for a reason. And there's some satirical undercurrents in that song too. But the point is, and you've got to listen to that song, he says it's coming to the USA. Not that it's here. And then there's a song called Everybody Knows. Everybody knows the deal is rotten. Old Black Joe still picking cotton for your ribbons and bows. And everybody knows. And I say that with those two Leonard Cohen songs because that does apply. Everybody knows the deal is rotten here, but we act as if it's not. And then again, as I keep saying, and I've said repeatedly over the last few days in prior episodes, there are going to be a great many of us, of you, not myself, maybe not yourself, but there's going to be a great many people out there. Maybe some of you, maybe not some of you, maybe some of your friends or family, who are going to be waving their flags furiously. They're going to be waving Old Glory. Nothing wrong with waving Old Glory. I've got no problem with people waving it. But what does it mean? What does that mean? Are you going to be celebrating July 4th, which is what I asked in an episode a few days ago? And people are going to be waving flags and they're not going to know anything about the United States, except for the things that they are constantly fed by Fox News or by other people who are talking a bunch of garbage, right-wing hate radio, and they're going to wear the biggest ass American flag you can find. I'm telling you, they're going to find the biggest one and they're going to plaster it on their backsides. Disrespect the flag, by the way, but they're going to plaster it on their backsides, or they're going to be wearing it, or they're going to be sitting on a towel at a beach that's got an American flag on it. By the way, do you know that is a disrespect of the flag, of a flag, to be sitting on it? And these are the same people that will say, oh, you can't burn the flag. How dare you? Oh. By the way, the United States Supreme Court protects that as speech. Do you know that? It does. They do. Do you know that? Yes, you know that. And, here's the thing. Some of these people who are screaming about you can't burn the flag, these are people that burned LeBron James's jersey in Cleveland. These are people who burned his jersey in Miami. These are people who sit on an American flag and go, oh, that's okay. They wear an item of clothing that's nothing but the American flag covered in the whole blooming thing, back and front. That is not really the proper use and the way you should be using any flag. But don't tell them that. And they think that the bigger the flag, the more patriotic they are. And it's just so surface and petty and superficial. And it's such a jingoistic thing. And the thing is, they don't care about the country. It's an overcompensating that they're doing. Because they have it in their minds that, if I wear this flag just big enough to cover my ass, maybe that will make me feel more patriotic. But they don't know anything about the country they live in. They don't care to know anything about the country they live in, except that they are able to drive around in it at 90 miles an hour and scream freedom and say, oh, my freedom is being abridged because you want me to wear a friggin' mask. And I say back to that kind of mentality, no, your freedom's not being abridged. Your sanity is, because you're talking shit, man. And you're not making any sense. And you can't refund stupidity. So that was, that's the cursory, it's an introductory look. It's my introductory look at this conversation, of this, monologue, but this generalized audio convo, or, because we are conversing, even if it's just me talking at the minute, talking your ear off. As you listen, you are hearing, you are thinking, your thoughts are running and racing, maybe or maybe not, and hopefully not getting anxious, but I know there's anxiety about a lot of things, including the country. There's anxiety out here, and we have to keep voting. That's one thing we've got to keep doing. And do not be discouraged. We have to keep fighting on. I think that's the real message also that comes out of all of this, is that we've got to think about these things, but we've also got to do, we've got to act, we've got to be, we've got to keep going. This is what happens in a society that is changing. These attacks on it. You being told that you can't pass out a slice of pizza on a line, that you can't pass out bottled water, and someone who's 78 years old can get dehydrated and collapse. So you can pass out, but you can't pass out bottled water on a line that is a long line that has been in place for 11 and a half hours. It's not democracy. How can you be calling that democracy? That takes people 12, 16, 17 hours, black people, brown people, to vote. You have Jim Crow all over the place, part 2 or part 3 or part 18,002. I mean, come on, folks. And you know this. If you're listening to this podcast, as you do regularly, you know this. I'm not saying anything you don't know. But I also don't think I am actually preaching to the choir. I think that's such a lazy term. Preaching to the choir. Where's the choir? And everyone in that choir thinks differently. So why assume that people are preaching to a choir? And the people who really need to hear this are, well, maybe the people who really need to hear this are people in your family that you need to talk to, rather than some abstract, or not abstract, some person who doesn't share perhaps the same political outlook you might share or that you have. I just think sometimes I guess my point here, and you know that I talk about language ad infinitum, is that we use language very lazily sometimes, and we're so tuned into the daily rhythm of language. It's automatic. It's like the Pointer Sisters, automatic. Listen to that song one of these days. But, you know, it really is. It's this point. And by the way, the Pointer Sisters are legendary, you know. And look, I mean, this is the thing. So we've got to start voting. We've got to continue to vote, rather. We've got to do this on the local level, on the state level, on, of course, the federal. But local is very important. And I don't want to end this episode without talking about the local and just saying this, that all politics are local. And you really need to tune in to what's happening locally. And that means not only watching your local news, as annoying as the local news might be to some people, but also getting involved and understanding how local government works in your neck of the woods, in your city, in your neighborhood, in your town, your hamlet, wherever you are. And wherever you are in the world, understanding how local government works. Not just here, but everywhere. How does your government work? How does local government work? Who is representing you in your locality? Who is your MP? Who is your designate? Who is your politician? And we shouldn't be divorced from these kinds of things, because everything is connected, in my view. And, you know, some things may not be, but you know what I'm saying. Everything it's got strands to it that connect back to things. It's not a vacuum. I think it behooves us in 2021 to get busy thinking and strategizing about 2022. If we don't want a return to Republican control of the House, if we don't want a return to Republican control of the Senate, if we don't want an eventual return in 2024, if we don't want that in the White House again, that thing that just sucked the soul and the life out of the world, let alone you, me, the country. The planet was sucked out by the evil that pervaded 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for the previous 4 years. If you don't want those things, we've got to start working now, right? We've got to start getting on this now. If we want more Democrats in the United States Senate, in the House, we've got to work our butts off now. All these campaigns you're seeing for the state houses, including Katie Hobbs in Arizona, and what you're seeing in the mayor's race in New York City, Maya Wiley, that's my candidate. I endorse Maya Wiley. I know over the weekend AOC did and others did. I told you the three people who had the best chance of winning, I think, were Eric Adams, Catherine Garcia, and Maya Wiley. And I said maybe Maya Wiley. That was but I think she does. I think it's not just a maybe anymore. I think she does. Maya Wiley is a progressive. And I know for those of you who watch MSNBC, you've seen her on there. And she once retweeted one of my tweets. No, that's not the reason I'm endorsing her. Because she retweeted me on Twitter. I'm going to endorse. No. She's got great ideas. I think she's going to be a breath of fresh air for New York City. She would be the first black woman to be mayor of New York City. And I think we need change. And I know for some people, change is an uncomfortable thing. In some ways, it is for all of us. It depends on what the kind of change it is that we are maybe potentially uncomfortable about. But I think Maya Wiley represents that in New York, a change for the better, for more comfort. And she's at Maya Wiley, I think is her Twitter handle, Wiley. Not Riley, like Bill Ritter mispronounced it last week at that debate that I played you a portion of, but Maya Wiley, Wiley. Maya spelled Maya. So, yeah, I mean, look at what's going on. If you want to see different things happening and you want to see more of what the country really does look like, not this control, cauterized, vanillarized look at America that is just got one gaze, namely the white gaze, and usually the white male gaze, always permeating us. It's been going on for centuries. If you want to break out of that, Jessica, Johnny, and company, and all of us, then you got to start to vote for people who represent all of us, not just the 8% of us or the 2% or the 1%. Maya Wiley is that person in New York. Katie Hobbs is that person in Arizona for governor there. And I can go down the line. There's a South Carolina governor race going on for next year, and I forget her name. And she's another person. I think her name is also Maya. And she's another person, black woman, who is trying to become the first black governor of South Carolina. There's never been a black governor of South Carolina. And I don't think there was in Reconstruction. And certainly not a black female governor. There's not been a black male governor, to the best of my knowledge, in South Carolina. There's been one in Virginia. And Justin Fairfax is the man to be the governor now in Virginia. And look, all that stuff with Justin Fairfax, it's actually been proven. Those allegations of rape against him have actually been proven to be wrong, by the way. So I'm back on the support Justin Fairfax bandwagon. Well, I mean, this is the first time I've been on it. I never was back on it. But I'm supporting him for governor of Virginia against Terry McAuliffe, who's already been governor of Virginia. And I guess you can have 2 terms as governor, but you can't have 2 consecutive terms, I think that is, in Virginia. I don't remember the law in Virginia. I'll have to go consult that. But Justin Fairfax, who was lieutenant, who is currently lieutenant governor, because Ralph Northern, because there's only a 4-year term in Virginia for governor. But you can't serve more than 4 years at once. It's got to be 4 years. And so the blackface governor, oh boy, Ralph Northam is at the end of his term almost. And the election is next year to replace him. Who's it going to be? The lieutenant governor, or is it going to be Terry McAuliffe? I don't give a rat's what the polls say. It's what the voters say that counts. And we've got to start working to get people who are going to enliven these states and these state houses. And they've got to be Democrats, because the other party, the cult, they're not even a party, the cult is not sleeping. They're not waiting until 2022. You see what they're doing. They're passing all these laws. They're depriving you and me of the right to vote. You see the U.S. Supreme Court, what they did in 2013. We are almost 8 years to the day, and somewhere in June 28th, 27th, whenever that, 26th of 2013, when the U.S. Supreme Court struck down Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance provision, which said that states, before you dare pass these voter suppression laws, you have to come through us at the feds. You've got to let us know, and then we will say whether you can or whether you can't. Pre-clearance. We will clear you if these laws are just. We will not clear you if they are not. And the Supreme Court said, fuck this. You guys in the states, you can pass whatever the hell you want. You don't need no stinking federal government to intervene and say anything. You don't need to talk to the feds. You can just do what the hell you want. See how that goes? And then in 2000, Bush v. Gore, the same Supreme Court with one or two of the same members on it, had the nerve to say 5-4 decision. Had the nerve to say, oh no, you've got to stop counting your votes, states, Florida. You've got to stop counting because that might harm our boy, W. And it might prevent him from starting an illegal war in Iraq. So you got to stop counting because he'll be irreparably harmed if he can't start that war, 3 years from our Supreme Court decision, But in this case, in 2013, Shelby v. Holder, oh no, you states don't have to do anything. You can do what the hell you want, actually. You don't have to do anything to talk to the feds. You can just not even talk to them at all, and you can do what you want. Pass all those voter suppression laws. Go on. Go ahead. And they did. All these states, Tennessee, all these southern states in particular, and others, they couldn't wait. Within an hour, those motherfuckers are passing laws. You can't do this. You got to show ID, voter ID, voter ID. You got to have this ID. It's got to be 8 inches by 3 inches. It's got to have laminated text. It's got to be laminated. It's got to be in a freaking vat of freaking gold. And if it ain't got the right amount of gold on it, you're not coming to vote. It's literally another version of how many jelly beans are there in a jar. Seriously, those were the kinds of voting tests, racist tests, that were being given to black people in the South particularly. How many jelly beans are there in a jar? How many bubbles in a bar of soap? I kid you not. How many federal judges are there in the country? We were being asked stuff like this, and the motherfuckers asking didn't even know. They just happened to have an answer in front of them. Well, they certainly didn't have an answer for how many jelly beans are there in a jar or how many bubbles are there in a bar of friggin' soap. Well, these motherfuckers didn't even take a bath. How the fuck would they know how many bubbles there are in a bar of fucking soap? Come on. Come on, people. But we've got to get active is my whole point. We've got to get active. We've got to get active because these Republicans, this cult, ain't sleeping. You see what they're doing. Objecting to voting results, certified ones. You see what's going on in Arizona. No wonder Katie Hobbs is running. This is madness what's going on in Arizona. We want an audit, or as they say, fraud it, of votes that have already been certified by the Secretary of State, by Arizona. They certified the governor there, the Republican governor, Doug Ducey. The Republican governor. He even signed off on the cert. He certified the blooming things. And now you got these Republican cult wackos. They're not even wackos because they're a cult. And they are evil. It's not that they're crazy, they're evil. And they want to, we got an audit. Ooh, we're going to audit these confirmed results. Certified. We want to audit them. And there's already been an audit. It's like, fuck. They trust me. Katie Hobbs, because she's currently Secretary of State, they already did an audit on this. And then motherfuckers now, these Republicans, these people now are absolutely going, we're going to have an audit now. And they don't care how it looks because what they want is power. They want to crush the country. They're doing it. January 6th was just lights, man. These people are going to try this shit again. And you had elected officials there from all these states that are involved in this terrorist attack on us, not just on the Capitol, on us. It's an attack on all of us, mate. We voted for those representatives, or we didn't, but we participated in that in the sense that we voted those people in who were their offices are being demolished and attacked. Come on. It's an attack on us. That's why I said a few episodes ago that this was not an attack on just the Capitol. That's what Mitch McConnell, there's an attack on our Capitol. It's an attack on the country. I mean, the attack on September 11th, 2001, we were almost 20 years into that. 20 years, the 20-year mark of that. In a few months' time, it'll be the 20-year mark. And no one said it was an attack on the World Trade Center. They said it was an attack on the country. So how come an attack on the U.S. Capitol building is not somehow also an attack on the country? On all of us. See? Here how... Do you notice that, what I did just there? Oh, dearie me. So look, I want to just say that we've got to start acting. And I'm not talking about Broadway for your Tony Award or your Oscar or your César or your BAFTA or the Nollywood Awards. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about we've got to start getting active. We've got to vote. We've got to get aware. We've got to educate. We have to do these things. And I hope to be part of that. I hope that I'm taking part in that. Well, I know I am on a number of levels. I'm doing things. But this podcast is part of that. And I hope that you do find some of what I'm saying here to be of benefit. And by the fact that you continue to listen, I think there is some evidence of that. I know it's a smug, self-satisfied way to end this edition of the Politicrat. But damn it, if you don't toot your own horn, as Joe Madison has often said, it don't get tooted. Don't forget, by the way, you can go right now to the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store at the-politicrat.myshopify.com and shop the Summer Sensations collection. The Summer Sensations series, I should say. And there are new t-shirts being added every day. Greenwood, never forget, never again. And there's also the Create series t-shirt. Create. C-R-E-A-T-E, period. Create. That's what we've got to do. We've got to create in this world. Not destroy, create. And there's more coming, and more items, and more different kinds of items, not just t-shirts. Here every day. There's some more that are coming up. Got some stuff in that is going to be posted. I'm going to be posting that soon. So please go right now to the-politicrat.myshopify.com and buy. Please buy. It would be greatly appreciated. There's lots there. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.